Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Troy Mitchell. I'm interviewing you. Thank you for agreeing to allow me to interview you. I'm interviewing you for a class project, and I'm just going to ask you some questions about your teaching practice. Is that
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
All right. So, question number one: how long have you been an educator?
I am finishing up my second year, so 2 years, and then next year will be my third.
Your third year. Okay. How did you obtain your initial teacher certification?
I completed a Maryland teacher education program with Morgan State University, and then I went on to complete the Praxis 1 and 2 exam and obtained my certification in the state of Maryland.
So you're a fully certified teacher in Maryland, and your major was
Elementary education.
okay. What has been the model used by your school for teaching in the primary grades? Primary consisting of kindergarten, no, 1, 2, and 3.
In the school I teach in,
Mm-hmm.
for grades 1, 2, and 3, you are self contained, meaning you're in the same room all day with the same students teaching all subjects.
Okay. Describe your current teaching. So, in the primary grades, just point for clarification, in the primary grades, you are self contained generalist educator.
Correct.
Okay. Describe your current teaching assignment.
I am a third grade teacher, self contained, all subjects, all day long.
Okay. So now, since you are a self-contained teacher and you're teaching all the major content areas, in which content area do you think your students do the best? So when you're in your classroom, which when you're teaching, what content do you think your students do the best, and how do you know?
Based off of data, I would say they perform better in math.
Okay.
They're more engaged, which kind of makes sense because they are more engaged in math. It's very concrete. They follow the steps. It's ABC. Whereas in reading, it takes more of a skill, and when they're doing it independently, they tend to struggle a little more versus when we're doing it as a whole group.
Okay. And you're using best as in they're more engaged, or best as in their standardized test results or class assessments.
Both. So their standardized test results and their level of engagement for math in my class have far exceeded that in reading.
Okay. Do you have a favorite content and or grade to teach?
My favorite content is reading.
Okay.
And grade level, third grade, that's where I feel like I'm comfortable.
Okay. Why is this your favorite?
I love books. I think books are amazing. They kind of take you on an adventure, and the more you're engaged in the story, the more you become part of the story, the more you get to interact with the characters. So I think books are amazing. I love reading.
Okay. Your students do better in math, but your favorite content is reading.
Correct.
Okay.
I think that's more so because I push them to enjoy it as much as I do.
Okay.
I think sometimes that doesn't necessarily work, and it may feel like it's a lot more pressure, which it is, but it's good pressure.
Do you, being reflective, looking back at your own practice, like not consciously, but just, if you thought about it, do you think you teach reading differently than you teach math?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I also think reading is more than understanding what's in the book or on the pages. When you think about teaching reading, you also have to teach like phonics. You have to understand the words, the letters, the sounds, and that for a lot of students is a struggle in third grade if you haven't been taught those skills in previous years. So I definitely teach it differently.
So, I mean, do you have a different motivation? Are you more animated when you're teaching reading as opposed to math or science or social studies?
Yeah, I think so because I enjoy it. So I feel like that comes out a little more. And maybe if I'm not as animated and I'm a little, reserved when teaching reading, and I the same, or if I'm reserved when teaching reading, how I'm reserved when I'm teaching math, then maybe that'll have a different result. So
Okay.
yeah, I never thought of that.
What is your least favorite content and or grade to teach?
Um, my least favorite content would be science.
Okay.
Least favorite grade would be like kindergarten.
Okay. But
First
in Maryland,
grade.
you're not certified in kindergarten.
Correct.
Why is this your least favorite content to teach?
In science, you have to explore creatures, like living live things. It's not my favorite to go out and like explore in nature. Just not for me. Not
Okay.
something I prefer.
Again, being reflective and introspective, do you think you teach this content different than your favorite content?
Um, yes, but I try not to.
Okay.
I try and be as engaged with science and social studies, math, all across the board. But I do think that subconsciously in the back, I'm like, okay, let's tone it down just a bit.
Okay. So how do you know you teach it different?
By the level of engagement and the interaction with the students.
So you're not as animated in that content area.
Correct.
Okay.
And whatever I do, I feel like the students kind of pick up on it.
Okay. How important is it for your students to like you? Like,
I think there's a difference between liking me and respecting me. So I would say respecting me, in my opinion, is more important than liking me. And I feel like over time, once those relationships build, then that becomes something. But initially, respecting me is more important to me than liking me. And I do think liking, like having some type of relationship or bond with someone is important, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you like them. It means that you respect them, you hold them to a certain level. I don't necessarily think that liking me would be at the top of my list.
okay. Do you think there's a social emotional component to teaching?
Absolutely, especially at that grade level or any grade level. To be honest, at elementary school, because it's just so much going on, not only in the building but outside the building, in your life, in their life, how they interact with one another. That you're setting the foundation for them for the rest of their lives. So absolutely.
How do you meet the social emotional needs of your students? What things do you have in place in your classroom, or how do you think that you're meeting their needs?
This year we tried a lot of restorative practices and comfort circles or circles where we came in and we spoke to one another. We had like a suggestion box. We also had a confidence jar where they were able to write down like nice notes to one another without with it being confidential and then reading it at the end of the day. We did a lot of different things just to be able to express ourselves in a comfortable and safe environment.
Okay. What does educating the whole child mean to you?
I think educating the whole child means assuring that you're looking at the child from all angles. So you're thinking about what they're going through emotionally, physically, mentally, how they're dealing with things in school, how they're dealing with things at home, how you're dealing with their parents, how you have interactions with their parents, and just understanding that what's in the textbooks is not going to be what they need in order to succeed, or it may not be the only thing that they need in order to succeed. So for me, educating the whole child is exactly what it says, looking at the child as a whole person and going to attacking education from that standpoint.
Would This is a follow up question. Would it be easier or harder to educate the whole child as a departmentalized teacher or a content specialist?
Absolutely. I think the world interacts with its components in multiple ways. So when you kind of take a student or you take a teacher and you set them and say, okay, this is all you're going to teach, then your focus becomes just reading, just math. So when that student is in your room for just reading, just math, you don't necessarily take time to think about everything else that can be going on. So it's definitely more challenging and it takes a little bit more effort on your end.
To address the whole child if you are a specialist. Okay.
Correct.
Would you enjoy teaching the same content all day?
I don't think so. I feel like as a person, you need balance. I can't see myself doing the same lesson multiple times in a day and trying to figure out a new way to constantly like keep myself going without kind of fizzing out.
Okay. What are the benefits and or disadvantages of being a generalist teacher? So if you generalist
Mhm.
teacher, what do you think are the benefits of it, and what do you think are the disadvantages of it?
I think from a teacher standpoint, one benefit definitely is that you get to master your content. So you'll be able to understand, you
As a
know,
generalist?
correct.
Okay.
You're because you are doing the same thing over and over. At some point, you should gain a level of mastery. But I think as a student, it's a disadvantage because you're kind of going from one room to another room. It's not as much stability as it could be. There may be different rules that you may have to abide by. There may be different. It may be just a different climate. You may connect with one teacher more than you connect with the other. So as a student, it may be a lot more difficult than as a teacher.
Okay, so let me clarify. So the question is, what are the benefits and disadvantages of being a generalist teacher for you?
Okay.
Like whatever it is you think is an advantage or a disadvantage, not how the teachers feel, just as a teacher, what do you think the advantages and disadvantages are
So definitely mastering your content.
as a generalist,
Correct.
teaching all content areas?
Cor-
Oh,
correct.
okay.
And as far as planning and making sure you're organized and
That's
making
an
sure
advantage or disadvantage?
it will be an advantage.
Okay.
Um, and this is for if you're teaching all content,
Yes.
right? Um, building relationships will be an advantage. A disadvantage may be your level of training in each area because you're doing all subjects. So sometimes you may not have PDs that you can attend for all subjects. Um, and those are the only ones I can think of.
Okay. So when you are a okay, I won't give you the content specialist question. As a generalist, what time management methods do you use to ensure equity of the various contents? For instance, there's an allotted time for each content. How do you make sure that you aren't, or do you cheat in favor of math and reading?
I have, but I've also learned to stick to a timer and like use like a countdown watch, not only for myself but for the students as well, so that they know this is how long we're taking on this skill. And some